Downer is very proud to bring this podcast series to you. At Downer, our purpose is to provide the vital services that connect communities and enable them to thrive. We do this by assembling the best minds, harnessing the power of technology and our enduring relationships to deliver sustainable outcomes for all.
My name is Jo Taranto and I'm joined today by Donald Hughan, the Corporate Risk Coordinator for Goulburn-Murray Water, and Sylvia Campbell, the Process Improvement Lead for Greater Western Water. And today we're talking about breaking down employment barriers for people with disabilities. Thank you for joining me, Donald.
Thank you, Jo.
And Sylvia.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about your role as Chair of WaterAble, Donald.
So my role as Chair of WaterAble is to really oversee what we as a network are trying to achieve, which our main vision is we're a network for people with a disability and their allies within the water industry in Australia. So really it's around making sure that people with a disability feel safe and are supported in terms of employment. And we run a series of programs as well. We run a leadership program. We run a program occasionally for connections, where we connect people with a disability with a leader within the industry to have informal conversations throughout a 6-month period. We also run a annual workshop, Day of Action workshop, that really brings the industry together to come up with some tangible, doable actions to implement within their organisation within 12 months. And that's, really going quite well.
Donald, there's been some exciting news for WaterAble recently.
Yes, there sure has been, Jo. So in August 2023, we proposed a change of our rules to our members at our AGM, and that change was to become a national organisation or national network. So that means we now have a reach across Australia, not just Victorian-based anymore, and we're really pleased to say that we've actually had 2 interstate partners already, so SEC Water in Queensland and Sydney Water in New South Wales, and then we've got all 18 water corporations in Victoria partnered with us as well.
It's wonderful to hear, and it's meant that people like you, Sylvia, have been able to access the leadership program. Tell us about what you've been involved in.
So there was a leadership program last year for the first time. I was really fortunate to be selected. There was only 4 participants, and throughout the time we worked on different aspects of our sort of personal employment journeys, our leadership, our vision and values for ourselves. And for me, the biggest thing from that program was really stepping into owning the disability label and, becoming a disability advocate and a disability leader.
Do you think that's a shift for someone to really own that label? Do you think that's been something that you've had to get used to?
It's a huge shift for me because I have been disabled for my whole life, but I didn't realise, because I've only got my ADHD diagnosis in 2022. And I'm now self-diagnosed as autistic. So before that, I was just oblivious to the fact that I was disabled, and I had some physical things as well. So it was the perfect timing for me, because it was at a time where I was learning about myself, learning about disability, that I am, making air quotes, disabled enough to use the label disabled, and what it means. And once I understood about the social model of disability, I was like, yeah, that's absolutely me. And so it really helped me kind of feel comfortable with those labels, yeah.
So you've both been part of the WaterAble program, and you have a number of partners now nationally.
Yes, so we have 2 official national partners, and then we have, so they're from Queensland. So we've got Sun Water and SEC Water, so shout out to you guys. And we also got partners from all 18 water corporations in Victoria, which the benefit for being a partner is their employee base is actually eligible to be members as well, and they're open to all our programs that we're running, and coming along to the workshops and getting tips and tricks on how to make their organisation more inclusive.
Sylvia, do diverse organisations do better?
Absolutely. So we, as a Metropolitan Water Authority, we work on behalf of our customers. And we have a really diverse customer base, and that includes people with disabilities. So the more diverse we are as a workforce, the more we can understand our customers and make sure that we're tailoring our services to their needs.
And Donald, what has the water industry seen since COVID in terms of skills shortages and employment?
So, yeah, since COVID, there's still been a skill shortage, and there is a number of barriers that contribute to that. The interesting thing is that statistically, we haven't seen a shift in the number of people employed with a disability. So that's still sitting at 53% within Australia, and I think we haven't been able to shift that and make that increase a little bit more. But I think with COVID, there is that still a little bit of fear in terms of wanting to get out and engage and engage with and gain employment, engage with people and all those types of things. So I think we need to create an industry where we're inclusive, we're inviting, we're welcoming of people. If they disclose, fantastic, that's great. And we want them to understand that when they do disclose, it's a benefit to them, because they won't have to push through their life, and they'll be able to get the support they need to make things a lot easier.
You're listening to the Australian Water Association podcast series, and I'm speaking with Donald Hughan from Goulburn-Murray Water and Sylvia Campbell from Greater Western Water. Sylvia, what are the employment barriers for people with a disability?
I mean, we'd be here all day if I went through them all. So I'm just going to call out a couple of big ones. So one is the fences we have in our minds about what we can and can't do and what society has told us we can and can't do. So for a lot of people, they will self-censor themselves from even applying for a job before they've even had the conversation. Invisible disabilities are a big challenge. So most of my disabilities are invisible. For people who can't tell, Donald here next to me is in a wheelchair. Everybody knows that he's disabled as soon as they see him. But for me, they don't know it by looking at me. And so sometimes I can kind of coast through and it's okay. But then at other times, people don't realise I have a disability. And so it's really hard. It's almost like you kind of, do I tell people, do I not? When do I tell them? And then is it too late? Like, do they just, have their opinions of me already? And, those are some of the really big ones. But even, applying for the job, going through interviews are a huge barrier for me. Getting in the door if there's no ramps, if the lift is broken, there are so many barriers.
And if I can just touch on one of the things that Sylvia just said, which is the invisible disabilities. Now, as Sylvia said, it's really hard for someone to disclose when they got an invisible disability that's not, people don't know about, because it's really people's unconscious bias and then being looked at differently. That's what really WaterAble is trying to achieve. We're trying to break down that barrier and make it more accessible for someone with a disability, just like Sylvia, that can disclose, can get the help that she requires, and fulfil their life without being, looked at differently.
Yeah. And so, again, thank you, Donald. So one of the things from the leadership program that I did was really about owning the disability and then making my invisible disability visible. So I have things like I have badges on my lanyard that tell people I'm neurodivergent. I have visible fidgets. I don't hide them in my pockets anymore. And I really try and make my disability very present in a space. And I talk to people and just lead with the fact that, this is how I will talk, or this might happen and this is what I need. I'm learning to advocate for myself. But that is really hard when you're in a position of vulnerability, when you're applying for a job, in an interview, even as a new employee, to advocate for those things yourself is really, really scary.
And I guess feeling safe to be able to do that without potential repercussions is a big leap of faith. So what are organisations and utilities doing to improve and dismantle some of those barriers, do you think, apart from becoming members of WaterAble?
Really, they're taking on the challenge that, is being led by WaterAble in terms of doable actions to make themselves more accessible for people with a disability. So just for an example, making a neurodivergent chill-out space or quiet room within their organisation where someone that is neurodiverse can go and just have a bit of time out when things are getting a bit too hectic for them. And really, it's great to see. It is really great to see that the industry is supportive and wanting to learn, wanting to adapt, and wanting to know what they can do to break down that barrier.
Yeah, and I think also the water industry is unique because it is such a collaborative industry. So coming together for the industry workshops, one of the previous workshops, they developed a reasonable adjustments fact sheet. So every WaterAble partner that went now has a fact sheet at their organisation which explains what is a reasonable adjustment, what are different types of disabilities, examples. So I guess in other industries where things are protected by IP and privacy and confidentiality, there's not so much sharing. So that's one of the reasons I love the water industry, is that we share and we grow together. And so now we have all of these sort of shared resources. So I just mentioned the reasonable adjustment fact sheet. Another thing is a diversity, equity and inclusion reporting. So as an organisation, do you know how many people have a declared disability in your organisation? What we measure gets managed. So start measuring it, and then also start looking for people. So don't wait for them to come. Go out and find them. There are employment agencies for people with disabilities. There's a whole lot of resources and partnerships, WaterAble, but other groups as well that support people with disabilities to get employed. So if we don't have them, go out and find them because they're there.
Finally, what advice would you have for other people who have visible or invisible disabilities? Donald, I'll start with you.
Yep, so I would just say to someone that got a disability, whether it's physical or invisible, just take that chance, give it a go. For me, I would encourage, particularly maybe starting off within the water industry, because the water industry is so diverse in what it does and offers so many opportunities for people with a disability. You don't necessarily have to go out and pull a bar or run some water down a channel or whatever the case may be, but there is a lot of things you can do and you can contribute to. And the fact that now, post-COVID, we actually do have the flexibility of working from home and flexible working hours and all those types of things, that's a huge attraction for someone with a disability that, say, can't work full-time. So, yes, it could be difficult to come out of your comfort zone, but I really encourage you to do it. You will definitely find satisfaction if you make that change.
And Sylvia, what advice have you got?